Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I must say I think it's been a good debate, but I am not persuaded by many of the arguments that have been put forward, even by my very distinguished colleagues as former chairs of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee. I think it is a pity that the consultation has been carried out quite as it is. I think it would have been more appropriate in something as vexed and contentious as this for at least the individual and the organisational contributions to have been, if not published, then at least digested in more detail and reflected. And I also think that it's important that if the government is committed, as has been recognised by many of our colleagues on all sides of the House, to exploring, and as I think I'm fair in saying the government has said, to exploring all the options, then there should be an options paper which shows what options have been considered. And I was sad to see that the option of mutualisation, which has been so effective in other areas, I think of Welsh Water, in many ways the best of the water companies, and a mutual company owned limited by guarantee, that mutualisation option should have been considered as part of that, and I still hope it will be. The truth is that, notwithstanding some of the concerns that have been raised, this is not a problem, and it comes at a time of severe concern and rising concern amongst people of this country as to cost of living and inflation and slow growth and, in policy circles, loss of productivity. It's not just that Channel 4 is in rude health, as has been pointed out. Revenues can come and go up and down over time, and has been sustained by its huge growth in digital advertising and its remarkable ability to reach interesting younger audiences. It's also that Channel 4 is itself a highly dynamic organisation and a highly managerially innovative organisation, and therefore to start to panic now as a government about what the future advertising revenues may be is to rule out the possibility that diverse, interesting, engaging and innovative responses may be undertaken by this innovative team. It's also very strange for a Conservative government to be wishing to sell a business off in the face of competition rather than embracing and welcoming that competition and expecting it to fight its corner. And, of course, let me remind the House that this intellectual property doesn't go anywhere. The fact that it's not trapped within Channel 4 doesn't mean that it doesn't reside within independent production companies, and that creates a dynamic tension and an energy which has always sustained this sector. So I regard this as, I'm afraid, an unnecessary attempt to address a non-problem at a time of much wider concern. And I would refer colleagues and the government to the ancient Conservative principle that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Of course.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, if I may call him that, for giving way. And on that point about intellectual property, isn't it interesting that of some of the most successful productions in recent years, that some of people like Michaela Cole, for example, have refused to go to streamers like Netflix because they insist on keeping the intellectual property rather than letting it reside with the British small production companies and writers and creators who are responsible for it.
Well, I think the point the Honourable Member makes is an interesting and fair one. Of course, if advertising revenue were so unattractive, you wouldn't get the rest of the market piling into it. And at the same time, you have got a situation in which no matter who the owner of this enterprise is going to be, they will not be immune from wider inflation in programming costs. That's the nature of the business, and the question is what innovative and constructive responses can be undertaken by a management team in order to address it. I would also say, however, that this is bad economics from a public standpoint. The House will know I spent a couple of years as a Treasury Minister, including in particular during the period in which the Secretary of State talked about all the support that had been given to the cultural sector. And I think this is bad economics. Even if the constraints were relaxed in the way that has been described, the revenue to be derived would only, on a net basis, be of the order of £500 million to £1 billion. And my successor, the Chair of the Culture, Media and Sport, present Chair of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, has pointed out that this is a very small drop in the ocean compared to the wider problem. But, of course, that amount of money is itself at 4% interest rates. £500 million amounts to £20 million a year. Are we really going to give up all of the control and the energy and the drive and the impetus that exists in Channel 4 now, and the £200 million of directed programming into independent production companies that comes from that, in return for what is the equivalent of a £20 million annuity. I do not think it makes any economic sense at all. Overall, this is not, I put it to the House, a Conservative proposal. I think what matters in this case is the quality of the ownership. Channel 4 has an independent ownership structure, happens to be owned by the state, but it has made it resilient to political pressure and able to commission highly innovative, risky and interesting forms of programming for which we celebrate it. I'd be happy. I can't actually because I've got no time. If I may later on, I will take his intervention. It is not a Conservative proposal to sell Channel 4, let alone at the matter. And even if it was sold now, does anyone really think that the value to be generated would not itself be a reflection of the proposed doom scenario in advertising revenues because of the way in which future cash flow works? The key question here is that we should support an enterprise that itself supports independent production companies, many of them in our nations and regions, that supports proactively disabled people, that supports the union and that supports levelling up. And that is what Channel 4 does. I've no doubt it can be further improved and enhanced, and I see its next episode as a down payment on the next generation of its own thinking about how its model can be further leveraged and enhanced. But at the moment, it's doing a superb job. We should not sell it. We should proceed and support it in any way we can in future.
Those who have participated in this debate by making a speech should now make their way to the chamber. Ben Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.